big sound in a small town, far away from the big city lights, making music every night. Good music with all our friends. Tell everybody, tell your mama and them, we're going out and we're getting down. A big sound in a small town. A big sound in a small town. A big sound in a small town. A big sound in a small town.
Hi, and welcome to Big Sound Small Town. I'm your host, Sandy Carlton, and this is a podcast about the lives and stories of the musicians, writers, artists, and their associates that have their roots in the small towns and communities across America. If you like what you hear, tell somebody. Enjoy.
Hi folks, this is Joan Harrell. I am wife, manager for Michael Reno Harrell, and I try to keep him out of trouble as much as possible as well.
He's a musician, so I know that's a chore in itself.
Well, we all have our cross to bear.
Yeah, I understand. I have this theory that anyone who is married to or is the spouse of a musician gets a free pass to heaven if there is one. So, okay. Michael told me yesterday that you didn't even know he was a musician and y'all had been working together for a while.
That's true. We met at a graphics company in Charlotte. I had been working there a few years, and he came to work there. And it was probably about a year when I heard him mention to a coworker that he was going to be sitting in with some musicians over at a venue near where I lived. And I'm like, so you play music? And so I went, and I was just like, you wrote that song? I'm like, that's a wonderful song. Do you have any more? And so he played me some more of his songs, and as time went on, and so we were, like I said, even we were co-workers, then we were just friends, and I would, go out and listen to music. Of course, I was big in the music world in Charlotte as well as the graphics world with a lot of my friends. So
were you aware of who these people were that you were going to see? Maybe that he was around at that time. Were you listening to that kind of music?
No, I was listening to jazz.
Okay.
I was spending a lot of time at jazz clubs and with a lot of different artists and stuff. But no, I had no idea who these people were.
Okay.
Or I wasn't listening to any, really, the kind of music that, Americana music maybe, but not the bluegrass where he initially had come from.
Right.
But, so, when I heard his songs, and then we, got to hanging out together, and as I say, that it just led to us, dating, and I was like, well, we need to do something with your music. And he had said, well, I tried to do that before. And I said, well, I'd like to try. So I just started doing that. And in the beginning, it was before the internet. So that was an interesting adventure.
Yeah, we'll have to learn about how you did that.
Just,
well, let me ask you. He told me that you said, if I can book you, will you play? And he said, yeah, thinking that possibly that wouldn't really happen. And then the next thing he knew, you had him booked all over the place.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it happened. He already knew the people in his genre of music in the Charlotte area, so I got to know all those people, and there were several groups that, and he may have mentioned this, that were getting ready to start a thing called the Americana Night at the Double Door in Charlotte.
Yes.
On Tuesday night. So I went, every Tuesday night, and what I started doing was getting on the mailing list, which of course all of us were these little,
right,
5x7 cards that we mailed out. And so I would get on other people's mailing list, and when I would get their card, I would see where they were playing, and then I would find the number and try and call and find out the person I was supposed to talk to send a package to. And once I found that out, I would send the package, and then I'd have to call back and find out if they got it, if they had a chance to listen to it. So, back in the day, it required a lot of time and phone calls,
right,
to figure out if that was in fact a spot that they were, would be good for his music. And so, being a part of that group of musicians in Charlotte was very helpful for me to start out with. And then of course the internet came along, and it got easier for me and everybody. But by then I had, he had established his music pretty well in the Americana world. He had 2 CDs that got up in the top 20. One went up to number 11. One went to number 16. His first 2 CDs. So that helped me out as well. And we did have a lot of help in the beginning.
But you did not know a thing about booking a band before this, right? Correct?
No, goodness, no. I've been just working in the graphics world, in the production art end of it mostly. I did do some customer service at a couple of the jobs I had, which, prompted me to have to talk to customers. And so, what I discovered early on with just talking to people on the phone is they want to work with someone that they like. True. As much as getting a good deal. So it was a lot more fun for me just to get to know the people.
Oh, I'm sure.
As much as they were wanting to, which made them be happy when I called.
Well, being a female, did that make it harder? Or I guess you had no reference point, so you didn't really know if it was harder for a female or a male to book things.
Well, my whole life, I've always been quite aware that you are judged differently as a female in whatever you attempt to do, and it's just a sad truth.
Yes.
So you work with it, around it, and ignore it really as much as possible. And then when people see you're really ignoring that fact, they respond to you better, I think. So, but what I did do was not always. I just would use like Joan Ellen,
right?
And then they didn't necessarily know I was his wife,
right? Then that way they could actually think you were his booking agent, which you were, but it didn't tie the two together, which is pretty smart.
That fact was probably a little more people were a little weird about that, and sadly.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember the first job you booked for him?
Oh my goodness.
And was it hard to do it?
I don't really remember the first job. I know that, like I said, Michael was in, knowing a lot of the musicians in Charlotte in his genre of music, and that's where we started doing the Americana night on Tuesday nights. And that was kind of like not something that I necessarily did. It was his music and his connections there that brought that on. And I don't really remember the first ones. I know probably the most extensive tour I ever did was 18 shows in 14 days in England, Ireland, and North Wales. And that, too, was before the internet.
Oh, let's talk about that. That is really cool.
Yeah, that took a lot of time. We had some help from friends that knew that had performed over in Ireland and England. Jack Hatfield, Michael played with for many, many years up in Tennessee, and he knew a lot about some folks in England that he connected me with. And then our friends Kay and Patrick Crouch out of Lenore, they had been to Ireland numerous times, so they gave me a lot of connections there.
So you just had to call these people from the United States?
I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because, there was like 5 hours difference.
Mm-hmm.
And just start calling and trying to, connect with them and explain who I was and who Michael was and how they could get in, any information about his music so they could hear it, and or just them knowing that I knew these other people was a great help.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that was. Now, were you able? Did you have? This comes from having booking agents so many times. I mean, did you realize where you were booking him? Like, were some of them way far apart, or were they pretty close together? I mean, did you have to drive like 400 miles past something that you came back to, or?
We tried to do it in little pockets.
Yeah.
I've tried to work with the folks there and them letting me know, okay, so if we book this, what kind of drive is it? Where will we be staying? It's not just the booking, too. It's all the logistics to go with it.
So basically, you're the road manager also, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I book all the travel. I figure out where we're going to stay, how much it's going to cost, book flights, just make sure everything's in order. And because he's writing the songs and the stories, and
it's also one less person you have to employ. So I take it travel does not bother you.
Oh, I love traveling. Yeah. I always have. It's kind of like in my blood from a kid. I'm an Army brat. My dad was in the Army. Until I was about 15. So we moved, every 2.5, 3 years. And when he retired and we ended up in Charlotte, I was like, well, we're not going to move again? That's no fun. So, and I did have a former life before Michael. I had a first husband, and we traveled a lot. He liked to travel, and he had a daughter that kept moving further west, and he was from up north, so we would go up, ride motorcycles a lot there and across the country, and so I'm always ready to travel.
Well, that's good, because I'm sure that makes it easier, not only easier to book stuff, but easier to understand what he's up against traveling from place to place. So that's good.
Oh, yeah. And one of the most wonderful things about all our travels, of course, are the people we get to meet.
True.
I mean, we've got friends now all over the country, upstate New York, Northern California, Florida, Texas, Midwest, Missouri, Chicago, just for people that we call really, truly good friends that we speak to frequently, especially this past year.
Yeah, I'm sure.
when we couldn't actually see them, we talked with them a lot on the phone.
So I guess you also booked the house concert type series that he's done a lot of, right?
Yes.
So I guess that does make it easier to befriend those people. I mean, do you not at times actually stay with those people?
Yes, and we do enjoy that. Getting to know people one-on-one like that, and that's what a lot of the people that do house concerts enjoy as well. That's, I think, part of why they do it. They enjoy not only music, but they enjoy getting to know personally some of their favorite musicians or storytellers.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it is. I mean, I could see where, I've done those, and I could see where on the other end it would be fun as a person to have a house concert. Have someone you enjoy hearing come to do it and stay. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun.
We actually did a few of those at our house in Charlotte. In fact, we invited some of the folks that we had met in England. They were coming over to do a festival, and we were like, yeah, stay with us, and we'll put on a house concert for you. And did it for a couple of other friends, Reggie and Ryan Harris.
Mm-hmm.
We did one for them. I remember I had not really heard Reggie and Ryan perform live anywhere except at some friend's house,
right,
at Christmas time and different events like that. And typically they're all sitting around playing bluegrass and jamming and stuff. And I was in the other end of our house in Charlotte when they started up on the house concert we were having for them, and I went peeking around the corner going, who in the world is that in my living room? Goodness gracious, what great musicians and voices. So that was fun. I'm
sure maybe at some point in my life I'll get on the other end of it, because it is, it's fun to be on the performing end, but I'm sure it's equally as fun to be on the hosting end.
Oh, it is. People, if you are a musician, people who like music and are willing to come to, support other artists as well.
Well,
typically.
Let me ask you, as the venues got bigger, did booking become easier or more difficult?
It got easier in some ways, mostly because, the reason the venues got bigger is because Michael got more well-known, so right. I was getting phone calls from people you
wouldn't have it cold call them, I understand.
Right, as much as seeking them out, I was getting calls. Right. And if I did contact a venue or a festival, and they had heard of Michael, then of course that was
much easier.
The more well-known he got along the way, that made my job easier.
Is there any place you ever tried to book and just could never make it happen?
One of the reasons some of that happens over time too is the fact that some of those venues, like really great little listening rooms around the country, they have such a list,
a long list, of
people that they want. So it could easily take me. It did take me, anywhere from 2 to 5 years. But I would contact them how they liked me to contact them, whether it was phone call or email or what. At least once a year, just to kind of touch base with them and stuff. They would either, they would always say, "Yep, he's still on the list. Yeah, give us a call next year." So, and then it would happen. So. And those were the shows, but a lot of those shows were what I would call anchor shows.
Right.
That I knew we could literally go do and come back and still make money.
Right.
But then I start looking for other shows to tie in with them.
Right. So that you would have something on the way or the way back.
Yeah. If we were going all the way down to, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, do the Red Dragon, I would be looking for something coming and going along the way.
Well, I take it you're a persistent person, because I would think a booking agent would have to be, and a road manager would have to be pretty persistent.
Well, Michael's very nice. He tends to call me tenacious.
Yeah, I would believe that. I mean, I would think that you would have to be.
I'm patient as well.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say that was going to be my second thing, is it would take a lot of patience also.
And, it's not something that I would do for anyone else. In fact, I was asked by a number of bands and musicians along the way if I would book for them, and storytellers. And I was like, no, I only really enjoy this because I love my product, and I love Michael Reno Harrell,
I do understand that, and I guess that it also becomes more pressure filled if you're doing that for other people, and more time consuming as opposed to doing. You take up a lot of your time to do that for other people, because I'm sure it takes up a lot of your time to do. Period.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and of course at that point I knew what kind of time it took, and there was no way that the money that I might get from a show that I could book someone was worth the time I was going to have to put into it.
Oh, I've had to book for bands that I've been in, and that is not it. That was never one of my favorite things to do. So
yeah, it's a job, most definitely.
And I always wondered, really, when I played in bands, how they ever coordinated the tour. You got a booking agent doing one thing, but you got somebody else taking care of motels and where you're supposed to be at what time. I mean, both of those jobs that you do are really, they're more difficult than what people realize, I think.
It is a lot of work. You got to, once you get, like I said, the anchor gig, and then you start thinking about, okay, who have I talked with in the last few years that might be at a venue coming and going?
Right.
And big map on the wall in my office with pins in it, all the places, not all the places, but a lot of them places. And it gives me a good visual, a quick reference to look over. Oh, okay, let's see, let's check over there. But one thing that definitely made it easier is when he became solo.
Oh yeah, oh yes, I'm sure. I'm sure booking the band must have been a real chore.
Yeah, the guys that played with Michael mostly were two people from here, Dale Meyer and Toby Watkins played bass with him there for a while, and they were pretty easy. Dale, that's what he did. He loved it, and he didn't mind driving the bus or the van or whatever. And I just had to make sure he wasn't playing with somebody else at the time, because that's what happened a lot of times too. He played with a lot of different people, but they were so easy to get along with and to work with. And I even ran sound a lot.
Oh, really?
Over the years, yeah, I had no idea what that was about either. I had to learn on the fly, and
wow,
that was probably one of the harder things, because I could hear what was wrong, but the knowledge of knowing
how to fix it,
what knob to turn was,
Well, that's yeah, sound men are the other people that get in heaven free, because sound men have such a terrible job. I mean, it's not so much with what he's doing now, solo shows, but boy, when you have a band, there's always somebody turning up, making your job.
Oh yeah. I remember one time, I'll tell this little quick story. Michael agreed that we would run sound for a band, a bluegrass band in Charlotte years ago at this little venue, and he agreed to help them out. He knew some of the guys there and all, and one of the guys that worked at the venue. And then suddenly he had to be out of town for some reason.
Oh.
And I'm like, well, wait a minute now. This is a big difference between instruments being plugged in as opposed to instruments being played into microphones.
True, it is.
And I wasn't used to that. But I can't even remember the name of the band at the time, but they were so nice and so understanding and so helpful. But I got it done, and they sounded good, I think, so everybody was happy. That was the interesting adventure.
That is pretty interesting. That is really, I mean, I didn't even think about that part of it.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm not a musician, but I did try playing guitar when I was younger, and I can tune a guitar.
Right.
I can hear it. But
wait! Are you a guitar tech too? Do you have to tune his guitars too?
No, I let him do all that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's funny.
There was that question at one time, changing the strings.
It's changing the strings, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, no, we're not going to add that one into the video. So
I don't blame you. I mean, that is one of the being a musician chores that is not one of my favorites. So, because you have to do it a lot, and you would think that you get really good at it, but it's still not that much fun. So,
no.
It's not. And okay, now, how is booking stuff and making arrangements harder for storytelling than it is, regular musical performances?
It's just really different, and it's a lot more limited. When we first started, Michael was already sort of writing stories that went along with his songs.
Right, yeah.
And so he made the stories longer, and we made a CD from a live show in Charlotte.
Right.
That was like in 90. Oh no, I'm sorry. That 2003, I think maybe. 2003, somewhere in that neighborhood. So I started to contact different storytelling festivals, because that was the only place I knew of that where storytelling was the kind of storytelling of personal stories like Michael was doing.
Right.
With music. And the number one question every single one of them had to me was, has he ever been to the National Storytelling Festival? And I'm like, it was totally backwards. It was like, you don't work your way up to the bigger venue. You have to somehow be a good enough storyteller to be invited to the National Storytelling Festival in Jonesboro, Tennessee. And then that's where all of these storytelling festivals that around the country send people to find storytellers to bring to their festival.
So it's kind of backwards then compared to the music business.
Yeah. So at that point, I was just like, I said, we got to figure out how to get you on to the Nationals. So there again, Michael had performed music with some folks that were already in the storytelling world, like David Holt.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, he had done been in a band with him in the late 60s, I think it was, called the Pigeon River String Ticklers. I just love saying that. And David Holt is just a wonderful, wonderful person, and him and his wife are great friends. And they, so David recommended Michael, as well as Andy Offutt Irwin is a great storyteller, and we had met him down in northern Georgia at a venue, and he had actually opened for Michael. So he put in a good word for Michael with the person who does the booking there at the National, Susan. Right. And so he was invited. So once that happened, then it became easier to. Yeah. And over time, more and more, he introduced storytelling into the music world, where people were just amazed by it because they had never really experienced it. But like some places had, like the Walnut Valley Festival in Winfield, Kansas. That was always a fun show to do. And John McCutcheon, a great musician and storyteller, he is a regular there every year. And So he had already introduced them to some storytelling.
Right.
So, what Michael did was everybody really loved that.
Well, he'd set that up for himself. You wouldn't have to see very many of his shows before he set up most of his songs with the story. So he kind of had that naturally going before he ever moved to that genre of music.
The stories just got longer.
Yeah.
A little more in depth. And,
right.
One of the great things about his stories are that they can be sometimes 8 minutes long or 18 minutes long.
Right.
Because they're just narratives of a great situation or a fun situation that happened, and you don't need every single detail all the time to still for it to still be a good story.
Yeah, and his songs are that way too. I guess he's learned to do that by crafting. A lot of his songs are a story in itself, and he's learned to craft that down to 3 minutes, give or take.
Right.
So I guess it's just a part of expanding some of the songs into the real stories behind them.
Right.
So that's that is an interesting side that I don't think. Now, when you would go to these, say you go to Winfield, you book I guess, do you fly out there and do that, or do you book music shows between there?
I'll give you a quick synopsis of 1 year that we went. Michael was out on the road already doing shows up in the Midwest.
Right.
And sometimes he would do Winfield as a solo, and sometimes he would bring a band. Well,
right.
That year he was bringing a band, and the guys were talking about flying, and there were two musicians, one from Charlotte, one from Morganton. And so I told them that, okay, since Michael's flying in, I'll drive all your equipment out, and you guys can fly if you want. So I went and picked up everybody's, amps and pedals and instruments and such, and whatever they wanted to stuff in my car. We had a little Scion XB at the time, and I left out of here. I think I left out on Wednesday, and I needed to be there by Thursday afternoon, and I got as far as just past Little Rock, Arkansas, and stayed the night and brought all the equipment in.
Yeah, you have to these days.
Yeah. So when I called the hotel, I told them I needed a downstairs room as close to the front desk as possible.
Right.
Because I was going to be by myself, and I had all this equipment I'm hauling in.
Sure.
And I got up the next morning, and I hauled it all back out and continued on my way. And Winfield would always pick the artist up in Wichita.
Okay.
And drive them down if they were flying in. So they got Michael and brought him in, and the boys flew in, and they got there with their rent-a-car, and by then I had all the equipment in the rooms, the respective rooms. Everybody's,
right.
Whose room is whose, and I had all the rooms figured out and all their equipment where it needed to be and all. So, just another one of the many things that I do.
Did you have to drive back by yourself?
No, Michael. That was the end of his that particular tour.
Right.
So we I can't remember if we had any more shows on the way home or not,
right.
but I made sure there was enough room for him and his guitar and suitcase.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's good.
Because we still had to bring all of the guys.
Oh yeah, because they flew home, I guess.
Back home, yeah.
Yeah. So now that's another thing too. Probably my listeners would like to know. So when you're booking, say, flights, how do you go about handling the instruments? Does he fly his instruments generally, or does he just use whatever, like a back line or something there?
No. He flies his guitar all the time.
Okay.
He has two different flight cases that he uses. And if we're going to be gone for a while and touring and at like a festival, he'll pack a soft case.
Right, yes. So he can carry it between, yeah.
Right, so he doesn't have to carry the flight case, which can weigh a lot.
I know. I know.
Yeah.
And he carries pretty high end. I've seen his guitars, so I know he carries a pretty high end guitar. So I guess that
he doesn't always take his really nice guitars when we fly across the country.
Yeah.
He has some nice guitars that aren't like the vintage ones
right.
that we wouldn't want anything really to happen to. So.
He ever get there and his equipment not get there?
Yes. Very seldom. I think there's only been a couple, 3 times where his guitar and suitcase didn't get there till the next day. Once was out, I think seems like it was in Washington State, Port Angeles. So he got out there and the instrument nor his suitcase, so he didn't even have a change of clothes.
Right.
So he had to do the first show on a guitar someone loaned him. And he said the strings were about 3 inches off the bridge. So, but he made it through, and the guitar made it the next day. So,
has he ever had anything damaged through it?
No.
That's good.
Of all those years, I don't recall once where anything was damaged.
That's good. That's really good. Oh yeah. How about when you guys went to Europe? Did he fly his instruments there too?
Yes. Yeah. Everybody flew their instruments. I guess the Jack played fiddle, so he carried his
own. Yeah,
fiddle
sure.
Along, and I think Tom Coon was playing mandolin. I think he brought his mandolin, but any other instruments, banjos and such, that they took, and guitars, all had to fly. Yeah.
Okay, that's Did you get to places and not have sound systems? I mean.
Oh goodness, the sound situation sometimes was most incredible. We did the North Wales. I'm sorry. It was called the World Music Festival in Wexford, Ireland, way over on the East Coast. And this guy that they assigned us for the whole time we were there for 4 days doing multiple shows in different venues.
Right.
Bless his little heart, he came in with a milk crate full of wires.
Oh.
And fortunately, Jack Hatfield, Michael and him have played together for many years, and he knows how to run sound. So, he said, let me just do this. And the guy just sat back, sure, got him a pint, and he didn't care, really, that we were doing that. But that trip was pretty interesting. One of the things that happened near the end, as far as logistics go, you were talking about flights and things.
Right.
We were near the end of the tour. We had flown into England and done a couple of shows. Then we flew. We went up to North Wales and did a festival there, and then we flew over to Ireland for about 8 days, and then came back and finished the tour up in England, and then flew home. So at the end of the tour in Ireland, we were over in Wexford, and I was sitting in a little pub, and I overheard 2 women talking about the Tour de France, which was going to start in Ireland that year.
Uh-huh.
And they mentioned that it was actually starting on a runway in Cove, where we were supposed to fly out of, on that day that the tour was. And so I leaned back and I asked these girls, I said, what day was that supposed to happen? And I'm thinking, what are we going to do? They're not going to fly anything out that day,
right,
because we're to France. So I called a guy, and I can never remember his name. We got introduced to him through Kay and Patrick, and he was a guy that was big in television and radio and stuff for many, many years over there, and knew everyone. So I called him and I said, okay, this is what I know. What can I do about this? Because at that point, I'm like, we need to change our flights.
Right.
There's at this point, four musicians and 3 of their wives, including me.
Right.
So there's 7 people. I've got to change flights. And at this point, we have a van that we've rented down at the airport in Cove. Can we leave that van at another airport if we fly out of another airport? I didn't know if that was even possible over there. So somehow this guy managed to help me work all of that out. I changed everybody's flight. They let us drop the van off, and we flew out of Dublin instead of Cove because we were closer to Dublin anyway. So it shortened our trip, as opposed to having to drive all the way back to Cove and stay in another day or two till we could all get flights out. He was able to figure out how to get us all flights out on the same day that we were supposed to leave, but at a different airport.
Wow.
So that was a challenge.
Yeah, I'm sure it sounds like it was a real challenge. I will tell you that Michael is really blessed to have someone like you helping him run his career. I mean, it's every musician needs someone like you in their life. It's
what I've heard a number of people say, I need a Joan.
Yeah.
But it's it's fun for me. I like coordinating and putting things together and finding really nice, fun places that I know he's going to enjoy playing, and the people there are going to enjoy what he does. So, that's my main objective, is not putting him in front of an audience he doesn't enjoy, whether it's a room with, 20 people,
right,
or a festival with 3,000.
Yeah, and there's nothing like being booked at the wrong place or booked with the wrong musicians. I think every musician has had that horror at one time of being the acoustic performer on a metal show,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's good that you can do that. I have, since I've done this show, I've had only one other person like you, a guy named Walter Finley out of Denver, North Carolina, who has someone, his mate runs the whole business for him, but that's that's a rare thing.
Yeah, there are a lot of girlfriends and wives and stuff and all, I've discovered over the years that sadly that they just want their spouses home more.
Yeah, they do. Yes, they do.
As opposed to, knowing that, that's who they are.
Yeah.
That's what, if you take away their music, you take away their, it's not just the livelihood,
Sure.
As many musicians have said over the years, I would do this even if I didn't get paid.
Oh, yeah, musicians will.
Because it's just who they are. It's what they love to do.
Right.
And Michael being not only a musician, I think a wonderful guitar player, but a songwriter, a storyteller, a creator of the music as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean that he is. I mean, he's a true artist all the way around. And speaking of that, I guess part of your job now is mail clerk for his painting. His artwork.
His
drawings, yeah.
Mostly graphite drawings. He had done several pieces that we had hanging on the wall long before I knew him. And in the 27 years we've been together, he'd only done one drawing, and that was the cover of his Closer Home CD,
right. Yeah.
which is a self-portrait.
It is.
Then the pandemic hit, and we're stuck here at home. He started writing a lot, and he recorded a lot of those and put them up on his YouTube channel. But then he started drawing again, and he's drawn, 30 plus. We've sold 20 plus. A lot of commissions. I've got a new page on his website for all the artwork that anybody could look at if they'd like. And but not only, the shipping of it, but now I'm trying to figure out more ways to market that.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, your show is a nice way to get the word out.
It is. And go ahead and promote where they can get that art right now while we're talking about it.
Yeah, Michael's website is www.michaelreno.com. And there are multiple pages there. You can go to the artwork page and see all his artwork and the cost of a lot of those. And then, of course, if you're still interested in any of the music and still have a CD player,
sure,
there is the store page that you can go to, and just read more about him too, as far as the bio,
sure,
and different pages there on his website. And of course he has a Facebook page, a personal one as well as a professional one.
Right.
Because they had the personal ones years before they started the professional ones.
Exactly. I understand that. I had a personal one. They kind of forced me to a professional one, which, yeah, that's a whole different story. But
right.
I seem to be able.
And of course, his YouTube channel. I'm trying to get more and more people to subscribe to that.
Sure.
And somebody had already put a YouTube channel out through CD Baby that was simply Michael Reno Harrell. So we had to come up with another name.
Right.
So if you go to YouTube, you have to go, youtube.com. It would be / the lowercase letter C as in cat, and then another / and then his name spelled out, Michael Reno Harrell.
Okay.
And then you can see all of the videos that he's made since the pandemic, some before, and he had started doing a lot of interviewing himself.
Yeah, he told me about that. Yeah, that's cool.
So, all the interviews with, everybody from Al Pettyway and Tim White from Song of the Mountains.
Sure.
And Jack Lawrence, Jack Williams, lots of different folks there that he, and he had just started that project. So I know he's looking forward to getting back into that because he already had quite a few scheduled.
Right. He told me that you guys lost like 150 jobs too, maybe.
Oh, yeah, just everything cancel.
Yeah.
But we did get a few, there were actually a few shows that didn't cancel because they were willing to go the Zoom route.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, some corporate shows. And then we've gotten some more corporate shows since then, as well as just putting together a music event with other promoters out of Asheville and Florida. And he's got one more show coming up, February 18th. It is, and it'll be on his website, the schedule page, and we'll, of course, be promoting it on social media along the way, too. It'll be a combined show with Jack Williams.
Okay.
Some folks out of Asheville. I can't remember. It's the music my mother wouldn't like or something like that. A guy, Bruce, that puts those shows together. He's been very instrumental in helping a lot of artists across the country find an outlet for their music during all this time.
Well, two of the best people I have talked to about that has been Michael Reno Harrell and Jonathan Byrd. They both have seemed to be able to work at a pretty good deal during the pandemic.
Well, it's a different odd feel to be sitting in front of a computer or a phone and trying to perform as if you're performing to those people.
I totally agree.
Be right in front of you, but some are doing it better than others. I think Michael does a good job.
He
Jonathan
does. Yeah, they both do a good job, really good job. So, what else we need to know, John?
Oh,
I can tell you that you have a very entertaining story, but I think it's more a love story what you've done than anything else. I mean, a love of music and a love of who you're doing the work for.
Yes, I've always been a big lover of music. And then, like I said before, I wouldn't do it for anyone else because I love my product.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. That's just fabulous.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sandy, for inviting me to do this with you.
Well,
it's not something that I'm used to. I don't stand in front of a microphone or on stage, and I don't want to. But I don't mind having a conversation over the phone and I've enjoyed.
Well, one of the things I also try to convey in this podcast is music is about more than artists. It takes people to in your case be both a road manager, a booking agent. It takes listeners, it takes DJs, it takes venue owners to promote a music community, and those people have valuable stories worth hearing also. So I thank you for sharing yours with my listeners.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you, Sandy.
All right. Bye-bye, Joan.
Take care. Bye-bye.